Welcome to The Scoop, NANP's monthly educational webinar series. I am your host, Andrea Granson. These webinars are recorded and everyone who registered will receive a link to the recording. NANP members can earn 1 continuing education credit for participating in these webinars by taking the corresponding quiz, which can be found in the member area of the NANP website. Today's webinar will conclude with a Q&A session. So please feel free to type in your questions as we go along so we can get to as many as possible at the end of the presentation. Okay, so let's get started. Today, our guest presenter is Dr. Gill Hart, Scientific Director at Lorisian and York Test Laboratories. Gill is an expert biochemist with over 30 years experience in the development, validation and evaluation of diagnostic tests and testing services. Gill started her career as Senior Biochemist at Hammersmith Hospital, London, UK, and subsequently worked for a number of R&D companies responsible for the development and validation of unique diagnostic tests for hospital and consumer use. In 1999, Gill set up her own consultancy to service the needs of clinical diagnostic industry. Gill has worked for many different clients within this industry and the related regulatory environment. Gill joined the Lorisian and York Test team in 2005 and has applied her scientific and regulatory knowledge to all Lorisian and York Test laboratory services. Gill regularly gives talks and provides CPD training and has written many articles and papers. Gill's expertise covers a wide range of topics. And welcome, Gill. Thank you for joining us today. We are pleased and excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much, Andrea, and thank you for inviting me. Thank you to NANP for inviting me to deliver this webinar today about a subject on which I'm really passionate about, and that subject is the role for and evidence to support the use of food-specific IgG-guided dietary optimization. So the learning objectives for today are to understand what food intolerance is, to discuss symptoms of food intolerance, to understand the difference between allergy and intolerance, and understand the different types of food intolerance and elimination diet strategies. We're going to talk about the laboratory testing process that we use at York Test Lorisian, and look at different food intolerant test providers. We understand why York Test and Lorisian measure all 4 IgG subtypes, and a little bit more about the research that underpins the use of IgG-guided elimination diet. It's an area that's always evolving. We're going to look at a few case studies and discuss at the end some frequently asked questions. And then briefly talk about the types of York Test Lorisian products that are available to NANP members, and to talk about an offer as well for you. So that's what we're going to cover today. As Andrea said, I'm a biochemist. I'm not a nutrition professional or a medical professional, but a biochemist. And I've been working with York Test since 2005. York Test Laboratories have 37 years of heritage. We're a global business and we're a leading provider of validated finger prick blood food-specific IgG tests. The heritage we have goes back to 1982, and the most significant points here are in 1998 we actually developed one of the first food-specific IgG test methods, and we set up our manufacturing plant, which we've evolved and are very proud of. The laboratory and manufacturing plant are accredited, fully accredited, and because of our heritage and history, we've been able to be involved in a lot of unique research projects over the years, as you can see from this schematic. In 2011, the Lorisian brand, our business-to-business brand from York Test, was launched. I've continued to work on mini review papers, and we're very proud to be awarded Food Intolerance Testing Company of the Year in both 2018 and 2019. I mentioned a few of my mini review articles. I've been particularly interested in gathering all the research together that's been formulated over the years and putting this together. So I've got links for you later on of how to access these reviews. but I've particularly been interested in the links between IgG-guided elimination diet and weight loss, IBS, mental health, and also sports performance, as a lot of athletes and sports professionals use testing such as this as well. I'm going to start by talking about the differences between food allergy and food intolerance. I'm sure most of you are fully aware of this anyway, but food allergy affects about 2% of the adult population, and the allergic reaction is very well known and understood, and it involves the IgE antibody. Symptoms come on very quickly and of course are potentially life-threatening, and even a very small amount of a food can provoke an allergic reaction. Foods such as milk, eggs, shellfish, peanuts, tree nuts, etc. And a physician allergy specialist referral is generally required when we're talking about allergies. Food intolerances are different. They are much more common. It's estimated that about 45% of the population have some sort of food intolerance, although that could easily be more. And intolerances take on several different forms. Food intolerance isn't just one thing, like a food allergy. There are different forms of food intolerances, and they are harder to identify. And that's because some food intolerance reactions are quicker, but some reactions can take up to 72 hours to manifest. You may have something that you've eaten at the weekend, and it may not be till the Tuesday that you suddenly develop your migraine or IBS symptoms. Also, multiple food and drink ingredients can be involved. At York Test Lorisian, we find that people that come to us that have positive reactions react to on average, about 4 or 5 different foods. So it is quite difficult to fathom out what's going on then for some people. I want to talk about food intolerances a little bit more now and break them down. The food intolerance testing market can be broadly divided into 2 sectors. That's tests that are used by physicians to help towards the diagnosis of disorders such as celiac disease and lactose intolerance, and other tests that provide information about where to start really if you want to embark on an elimination diet, and that's where the food-specific IgG testing comes in. Breaking this down a little bit further, you can see here food allergies on the left-hand side, the food intolerance tests that are involved more in diagnosis. So you've got your immune-mediated test reactions for celiac disease. That's your antimycel and your anti-transglutaminase antibodies. You've got your non-immune mediated food intolerances such as lactose intolerance, where you have a hydrogen breath test to test for it. Chemical sensitivities come into this bracket too, with things like sulfites, MSG, food additives, sweeteners, all very small molecules generally, very tiny molecules, which will, you'll ingest, you'll go straight into the bloodstream, straight through the blood-brain barrier. Usually if you've had caffeine, alcohol, sugar, all of these small molecules. And there are no tests really for chemical sensitivities. Small molecules don't produce antibodies, they're too tiny. You need a larger molecule to produce an antibody. And so for chemical sensitivities, you usually know what's going on. And then there are elimination diet strategies, such as, we all know the gold standard elimination diet and challenge, where you start to guess really to remove one food type at a time, to remove it from your diet for maybe a number of days or weeks to see if you feel better. If you don't, then you start and try another food. When you think about the fact that people on average react to 4 or 5 different foods, it's virtually impossible to determine the exact combination of foods that are relevant. I also put in this bracket the low FODMAP diet. FODMAPs are types of carbohydrates in foods that have been attributed to IBS symptoms. And again, with a low FODMAP diet, you would need to do a targeted elimination diet to remove those different types of FODMAP foods from the diet and see if that's helpful. But there's no test information that you can start with for these sorts of strategies. So the IgG-guided elimination diet, it starts with a food-specific IgG test and enables people to actually see exactly what their body's reacting to so that they can target this and remove the foods from the diet. I put underneath this non-celiac gluten sensitivity because I think this is a important point. Non-celiac gluten sensitivity is a condition shown up by raised anti-gliadin IgG, anti-gluten IgG, and it's also able to be diagnosed by the IgG test. On the right-hand side, I've got a raft of other tests, really, that range from things like hair testing, which have absolutely no basis in science for food intolerance. Hair testing can certainly be used for mineral analysis and things like drugs and alcohol usage, but they cannot be used for food intolerance. And there appear to be many of these types of tests on the market that have no basis in science at all. There are a number of other test types here that I've mentioned, so that you're aware of, with varying levels of scientific and often no scientific basis, and I'm happy to talk about these further. So what options do people have if they suspect they might be reacting to foods? Well, a lot of people do nothing. They feel that being tired is normal for them. Their IBS symptoms might be normal for them, and sadly, continue through life, maybe not feeling as well as they could do. They could go and visit their physician or nutrition professional. People often guess what to remove without any evidence. The fads are being gluten-free or dairy-free. And they can go through elimination diet and challenge process, as we've talked about, by guessing what to remove and then seeing if that helps. So an IgG-guided elimination diet strategy is a very positive strategy that can be used as a starting point for an elimination diet. And I've mentioned a few of the other methods that are available too. So the symptoms that are associated with food intolerance are wide and varied. There's probably more, apart from the ones on this list here, but they can range from things like headaches to skin problems, joint pains, weight loss and weight gain, fatigue, things like digestive problems, things like rhinitis and sinusitis, anxiety and depression. And there's some increasing evidence around these areas, particularly in the mental health, anxiety and depression areas, coming into the research now. So why would we measure food-specific IgG? As I've already said, it's used as an aid to management of dietary intake. It's not a diagnostic of food intolerance because there are other types of food intolerances that are not detected by IgG measurements, such as your celiac disease and your lactose intolerance. It provides a fast track to help to define an elimination diet. And also with this food intolerance, foods can be introduced. Going through a gut healing regime and removing foods from the food diet can mean that foods can sometimes be reintroduced, and elimination is not necessarily for life when we're talking about this strategy. I want to talk now about the reasons why individuals approach York test Lorisian to actually remove, to find help. And from our data, I mean, this goes back to 2016, but we collect our data every year, and it's broadly the same. About 60% of people that come to us have digestive problems, and then you can see skin, fatigue, migraines, respiratory, joint pain are also very clear. Secondary reasons why people approach us, that is not the main reason they've come, but they also, a lot of people say that their energy levels improve, so that people that are fatigued, again, the digestive, migraine, skin, joint pain, weight gain, respiratory and low mood. So these are some of the main reasons why people come to us. 65% have flare-ups in their condition and 35% have a constant problem. About 79% have seen a doctor already, which we do encourage, and 36% have already tried using a food diary with varying degrees of success. But felt they need some more help, and about 20% have already seen a specialist. We know that a large number of people have suffered for many, many years before coming to York Test as well to do the test. We're very proud of a study that, we developed this test in 1998, and we gathered reams of data, as we still do every year, to collate and find out really from our customers, how they found the test, and how successful they found the results. And we worked with the University of York, and I published data with the University of York in 2007 from over 5,000 people who'd eliminated their trigger foods after taking a food-specific IgG test. Now, this is a real-life study. It's not a double-blind, placebo-controlled study. It's a real-life study, and we continue to collect data and see equivalent results year on year. Just we will be publishing our 2019 data at the beginning of next year. So what we found was, you can see the figures here, the percentage that reported feeling a benefit from taking the test and removing the foods from the diet cover the range of symptoms that we've talked about. And actually overall, we find that about 3 out of 4 people that come to us and change the diet report a benefit of varying degrees of significance. We've broken this down. So, for example, 777 people out of a cohort of 3,026 reported that they had irritable bowel syndrome, and 84% reported a benefit. Similarly, with people suffering from diarrhea and bloating, and these are quite large numbers, 576 people with bloating, 92% reported a benefit. And then we've broken it down further for things like fatigue, 648 people, and 88% reported benefit, and skin problems, similarly, things like eczema, psoriasis, acne, rashes, migraines and headaches, depression and anxiety, and certainly depression and low mood, people do report back improvements here. Very interesting paper I'm going to mention later on about this. And overall, people took around up to sort of 3 weeks to feel better. 68% of people took up to 3 weeks to feel better, but some people feel better quite quickly. And when you're talking about energy levels and digestive problems, they tend to resolve much quicker than, for example, skin problems and joint pains, which take a little longer. So overall, from our survey data, and we've as we say, published our 2018 data, which showed that 80% of people changed the diet reported an improvement here. And in this study we published in 2007, it was 3 out of 4 people who changed the diet reported an improvement. 68% noticed this within 3 weeks. The interesting thing for me, and very significant, was for those who dieted rigorously and reported a high level of benefit. 92.3% noticed a return of symptoms on reintroduction of the offending foods, showing that this approach is a specific and active approach, and obviously is a fast-tracked approach for an elimination diet, giving positive results. So yes, this is our recent data. From 2018, 8 out of 10 people changed their diet reported an improvement. 7 out of 10 people had been suffering from their symptoms for over a year, and 25% of those for over 10 years. You can see how significant this is for people. So let's look a little bit about reasons for food intolerance. So why are approximately 45% of the population, maybe more, reacting to foods that their grandparents ate without a problem, or maybe they had a problem but didn't talk about it as much? There's lots of different reasons why, and I'm sure you can think of some as we talk today. So possible reasons include things like our soil quality, the use of fertilizers, the intensive rearing of animals, food processing, food ingredients, chemical pollution, the stress in our lifestyles, and the use of antibiotics and painkillers. All of these factors can be very important in affecting body, and more specifically in affecting the gut. And really, it is absolutely no surprise at all that factors affecting food intolerances are the factors affecting the gut microbiome, as you can see from this schematic here. Things like your hygiene, stress, diet, nutrition, drugs, anything that can impact the immune system, your immune system within the gut, will impact. I mean, your gut, and this is the subject could well be the subject of a separate webinar. It's such a huge subject, but every time I research IgG and food-specific IgG, it comes back to the balances within the gut and the gut microbiome, and this is absolutely important to remember. It's an interesting and useful slide we have here. Taking this a little bit further, well, what's going on in a compromised gut? I mean, this is very simplistic. The immune system, is a very complex system, and the balances are very fine. But if you look at this schematic, you'll see that larger food particles, the yellow circles, labelled 1, pass through the gut wall in a leaky gut into the bloodstream and can cause an immune response. Now, in order to get an immune response, you need to have a large food protein. If you think about an antibody like a claw, a big claw, that claw needs something to grab hold of. You can't have an IgG reaction to a small molecule such as saccharin or ascorbic acid or benzoic acid, and so you need that large molecule for an antibody to form. And it's when those large molecules go through into the bloodstream that you can potentially get an IgG reaction. The approach then that's taken once we've identified the foods that are causing the reaction is the 5 R's, which we'll talk about later, but removing the reaction foods, you'll all be aware of this, repairing the gut, re-inoculating with probiotics, resting the gut by removing the reaction foods, and then reintroducing the problem foods one by one to see if they can be tolerated again. So the gut permeability, the leaky gut, is the cornerstone of the gut microbiology-brain interaction. It leads to, gut microbiology and their products and incompletely digested nutrients such as food proteins in the bloodstream, getting into the bloodstream, and the diet, the composition of the gut microbiology, the intestinal permeability and health, and actually the blood-brain barrier as well as the gut barrier and health are intrinsically linked. And because 70% of your immune system is present in your gut, that balance is forever changing, and anything that can upset that balance will impact gut permeability and health in general. The IgG response is very interesting and quite complex, and not totally understood yet. IgG antibodies can be produced to many factors. They're used for fighting infections, they're raised to food ingredients and other proteins that are perceived as foreign, and clearly involved in autoimmunity. Unlike an allergic response, the IgG response is delayed because the biological half-life of circulating IgG is quite long. It's 7 to 23 days, depending on the subclass. And there are 4 subclasses of IgG molecule, IgG 1 to 4. These are present in varying amounts from your IgG1, which is 60 to 70%, down to your IgG4, which is 1 to 4%. And they all have different actions and activities. And it's really, really important that all 4 are measured to get an accurate picture and a maximum benefit for an individual in terms of a guided elimination diet. IgG molecules are fascinating, and the way they are recepted in the body and have actions have the unique feature of initiating pro and anti-inflammatory reactions. So the IgG1 and 3, the ones that are, they're really high levels in the blood, are very strong mediators of this pro-inflammatory reactions, and the most predominant subclasses involved in responses to food proteins. IgG2 is a weaker mediator, but no less important. IgG4 is the one that has typically been associated with blocking allergies, and that it has elements of promoting tolerance rather than intolerance, but there is a fine line between them, and the mechanism between this blocking is not entirely clear, although I reference James and Till's work from 2016, which might be something you want to research further. So the contact of antibodies with consumed food particles can involve antibody immune complexes causing damage, but also IgG antibodies to foods often mimic reactions to proteins that are similar that are in the body. And also recently, this is called molecular mimicry, but recently there's been disease associations associated with isolated levels of each of the 4 subclasses. And these disease associations include IBS and rheumatoid arthritis. Another couple of interesting references you might want to follow up here too. So it's important that all 4 subtypes of IgG are measured. This again, an interesting paper from last year where 100 patients with autoimmune diseases, things like your Crohn's disease, Sjogren's syndrome, other autoimmune diseases, were compared with controls, and there were much greater levels of food-specific IgG reactions in those who have autoimmunity compared to controls. And the conclusion was that food intolerance is a very important tool for those with autoimmune disease and should be performed in each patient to tailor an individual diet. That's the IgG test for food intolerance. And all about, I think, about reducing the immune load, which is very important. Reducing the foods that are triggering the reaction will reduce the immune load. I'd like to talk now about the technical stuff, the stuff that goes on in our laboratory, to give you a little bit more insight into what we do. I'd like to start by just talking through how we actually take a sample. We have quite a unique finger prick blood sample method that we developed in 1998 alongside the test method. So this involves cleaning your hands, using a lancet as you'd expect, and collecting your blood onto a little stick, a little wand we call it. That defines the volume of blood that's collected, and it also means that the sample is very stable. The actual sample then is stable for up to 28 days with transport, and so it can be shipped back with absolute knowledge that it's stable and safe and contained. Pop it back in the pot and post it back to our laboratory, which is based in York in the UK, which is where I'm talking from today. We use an ELISA test, an enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay test, to detect all 4 subtypes of the IgG. The ELISA test we've developed is highly reliable, and we have greater than 98% reproducibility, which means that if you take 2 samples and you feed them into our laboratory, they'll give greater than 98% reproducibility correlation between the 2 sets of results. This is an ELISA plate. I'm going to talk a little bit about what happens when the blood sample comes into the laboratory. And it's made up of 96 little dishes. Now, if you take the next schematic, this is one of the little dishes, and at the bottom of this one is dried down, let's say cow's milk, and at the bottom of each of these little dishes we will dry down our purified food extracts, and the amount of food extract on each of these little dishes is absolutely critical For example, if there's too much, you could get a false positive result, and if too little, a false negative result. And because there aren't any international standards for food-specific IgG testing, we've developed our own calibration system, and we've validated it with the research work that we've shown to show that people get better when they take the test. The ELISA test here with each little dish, we dilute your sample down, bring it in as the antibodies coming in, they bind to the dried down foods, give them a wash, then we come in with a secondary antibody which is linked to an enzyme. We add our substrate, and if there's a colour change in the little dish, then we can see that there's a reaction here. The colour changes are measured using a spectrophotometer, not by eye, in the laboratory, and we can then calibrate the results and provide a result for the individual. Quality control is absolutely key. We have quality control steps all the way through the manufacturing process, because we actually manufacture the tests ourselves as well in our manufacturing plant. So we actually do quality controls on the food, the purified food extracts, pre and post testing, manufacturing, and key stages through the testing process. If quality control specifications are not met, then the customer is requested to provide another blood sample, but this is in less than 1% of cases. The real points of difference that York tests offer is that false positive results remain the biggest challenge for test providers. Many people are told to remove foods from the diet that they don't need to with some food-specific IgG tests, but we use a proprietary formulation during the test that we developed in 1998 to block false positive results. That means on average, people react to about 4 or 5 different foods rather than many, many foods, which are typically given to IgG testing a bad name. We block these false positive results, and we routinely publish, as you've already seen, our results to show evidence of the effectiveness of the tests offered. This is really important as there's no international standards for IgG testing, and so it's important that each individual test provider publishes their results to show evidence of effectiveness. Results are provided in a colour-coded sheet, as you can see here, with reaction foods shown in the order of strength of reaction shown in red, borderline foods. This is the diagnostic grey area between positive and negative, which means the foods may or may not be beneficial for the individual. And we suggest that foods are either removed from the borderline section or rotated or tried one by one. Or no reaction foods, foods that can be eaten without restriction, unless it's known that those foods have caused a problem in the past. Each individual will receive the results correspondence directly from our accredited laboratory, clear colour-coded results, supportive guidebook, and a 12-week food diary as part of the pack. And we've talked before already about the 5 R's: removing, replacing, re-inoculating, repairing, and reintroducing. That is the strategy once the test results have been received. So now I'd like to move on to talk about some of the food-specific IgG-guided elimination diet studies that have gone on over the years. Now, there's a lot of studies here, and I want you to be able to use these as a resource. I'll provide my email address at the end of the talk, so that if you want to contact me, I can give you the links to all of these studies and some of the papers. And also, if you've got any other questions that we haven't covered today at the end, please do contact me. Because I'd like to be able to provide these as resources for you. I've already mentioned the 4 mini review papers I've written recently. A lot of these, as I say, have come back to covering the research that's been done by a variety of groups over the years, but also showing the links between and the importance of the gut microbiology. And and the gut, which we know about. A lot more is being found out about the gut microbiology. A lot more is being found out about what microorganisms are there, but not as much now. Not much is known yet about what they're actually doing and what makes a best combination of microbiology to give the most positive health outcome. And that's still there's much more to be found out about that. In terms of IBS, here's a series of papers that have been published over the years on IBS, food-specific IgG antibodies and IBS. I'll just talk about a few of them here. The paper published in Gut, British Medical Journal Gut in 2004 was actually using the York test. It's the first double-blind randomized control trial showing that food-specific IgG antibodies testing is effective in irritable bowel, and this has been followed up by other studies since, including this paper by Guo et al. in 2012. Where people see significant improvements in abdominal pain, bloating, diarrhea frequency, feelings of distress, and total symptom score compared with baseline. I think these are sort of studies that are really showing benefit for individuals. Sjogren's syndrome is an interesting autoimmune disease with damage to salivary glands, lacrimal glands, dry eyes and mouth. Some interesting studies showing that the effectiveness of IgG-guided elimination diet in Sjogren's, and also the fact that anti-yeast IgG antibodies have been shown to mimic the autoantibodies found in Sjogren's syndrome. Again, providing a link with molecular mimicry that we talked about earlier. Inflammatory bowel disease, again with Crohn's disease, an autoimmune disease, we've seen increasing publications around the validity of IgG-guided elimination diet in ulcerative colitis and Crohn's. Some of the topics here, some of the studies here, and a really nice one that's just been published that I haven't mentioned on the slides here, by Zai et al. 2019. I can provide that link for you if you get in touch with me. Similarly with migraine, a very nice review actually just been published, again not mentioned on here, but by Geiselman review 2019, which again I can provide you the link for if you get in touch. But lots of studies on migraine actually, and interestingly, in migraine and irritable bowel, another study published this year, this one was 2012, but often there are links between migraine and irritable bowel syndrome. A few more studies on migraine, some really good double-blind randomized crossover trial here. Similarly with rheumatoid arthritis, a number of studies, older studies here with rheumatoid arthritis, and what it really interests me is the rising studies now on the links between food-specific IgG elimination diet and improvements in mental health and depression. The study at the bottom, Teo et al. Just published recently, very interesting, to using saying that high levels of IgG antibodies are a risk factor for adolescents' depressive disorder, and that removing of the foods from the diet is beneficial. Really interesting review there. But there's been a lot of work by Krakular et al. In Poland on linking IgG and depression, and it's something that we've been seeing since 1998. That very high levels of people report increased improvement in their mood and changing their diet according to the tests. So this is something that we're interested, of course, in watching the research evolve to catch up with what we've known for a long time. Weight loss, there's been some interesting studies in weight loss, and certainly Lewis et al. Was one of the most significant. They even claim the test may represent a strategy to counteract the severe US obesity epidemic, which is rather a bold claim, but certainly interesting. And again, it mimics what we've seen over the years. So overall, I hope you find these resources useful. I'm sorry I've had to go through them quite quickly. There's an awful lot there. There is good evidence that diet adjusted to food-specific IgG levels can lead to symptom improvement, as we've seen. York-test Lorisian, we don't claim to treat or cure symptoms, but we do offer, the guided elimination diet. It's clearly not a diagnostic test for food intolerance. There are many different types of food intolerance, but it's there as a guided elimination diet program that is shown to be effective. I said I'd mention a few case studies. We have many case studies at York-test Lorisian, and I've got a few here that I want to just briefly cover. One case study I've got here, a 5-year-old Harrison, suffering from behavioural issues and tiredness, behind in his speech and language development. His teacher noticed a change in his behaviour after he had cow's milk, and his mother wanted to follow up and see whether there was a link. He did the test with us and revealed that he was intolerant to cow's milk, yeast and eggs. And his mother has said that the program we've offered has lifted the haze and eased the struggle. They were very keen for us to tell their story. Other studies, migraine studies, case study, Andrea Hansen, who came back to us amazed because she'd been suffering from migraines for 25 years when she found the York-test Lorisian program. And she was intolerant to cow's milk and corn. And again, 3 weeks later, she felt she considerably better, and she's continued to talk on our behalf about the life-changing events that have happened for her. Case study David, age 39, a case study around anxiety and depression actually. David had suffered for many years, and eggs were responsible. He found that removing eggs from his diet really helped his anxiety and depression. The case studies go on, but and I'm really mindful of time now, but again, we've got a number of case studies that many case studies that I could share with you. So in terms of, I just wanted to move on then to some frequently asked questions. There's lots of questions that I know people ask. One of the main ones is, can the test be carried out using blood taken from any area of the body, or does it have to be, or from a full blood draw? Does it have to be a finger prick? Well, we've validated the finger prick method. Sometimes a heel prick's preferred, and this can be particularly helpful for children. Does eating a food regularly raise the probability of raising a food-specific IgG reaction to the food? Well, my thoughts are that increased consumption can certainly increase the probability of the body reacting to food, because if you're bombarding your body with a food, the more likely it is to go like eek, there's more chance of an IgG reaction. But many people eat large quantities of food and never react to produce food-specific IgG antibodies, and really the only way you can tell whether you're reacting is to take a test. What medications interfere with the test results? Well, there aren't any medications that interfere with the actual process of the ELISA test process, but we do know that if people are taking steroids and immunosuppressants, they can suppress antibody production. The tests can still be carried out. The results will reflect the immune status at the time, but results may be lower, and positive results are seen, could still be very significant. So Lorisian offer a unique opportunity to create a real valid added service to your customers, to offer a simple to use, easy finger prick, a premium customer service, providing personalised evidence-based actionable results. We have shown that working with practitioners, we can increase recommendations and referrals to their core business. We have a test option that we offer. It's called Lorisian Gold from York Test. It measures food-specific IgG reactions to 208 food ingredients. We have an offer on for that at the moment. Usual normal price of $230 and now is on offer for you at $125. And we offer as part of our registration a free registration process, free marketing and business support, and further webinar training about our service. And in order to register, you can simply complete the form on the link below, or you can contact our customer liaison manager, very friendly, Josh Netherwood, who'll be able to answer any questions you have about the service, or you can of course contact me. I'll repeat the offer again, $125 offer on our gold service. And I'd like to thank you very much for your time today. I've enjoyed talking about this subject, and I leave you with myself and Josh's contact details, and we really look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Gill. That was fantastic. So I don't see any questions here, but I have a question. You, on one of the earlier slides, you mentioned something like 92% of people, you know, they experience their symptoms again when they reintroduce the food. Do we know how many of those people followed a sort of gut healing protocol? You know, did they take the L-glutamine, the digestive enzymes and the probiotics, etc.?
What we do know is that that these people were advised by the nutritional therapist, and so I don't have all the details for that, but I do think it's really important that the gut healing process is you know, combined between actually the you know, the removal of food from the diet to reduce that inflammation, and then the healing of the gut using your digestive enzyme, probiotics, L-glutamine, and then, you know, together those can help.
Right, yeah, so it's a sort of two-pronged approach. And then somebody called Maureen West is asking, how long does it take to send and then get the results back?
The postage comes over to us over in the UK very quickly, and results, the turnaround time in our laboratory is, you know, within a few days, and the results will be emailed back anyway.
Okay, all right, yeah, someone else Julie's just asked the same question.
Yeah,
of the test.
Yeah, it's very, very slick service. We've got a hub in the US which handles all that for us.
Fantastic. Okay, Gill, can you just explain the difference between York Test Laboratories and Lorisian? We've got two names here, just to clarify for people listening here.
Well, York Test Laboratories was set up in 1982, and we developed the food-specific IgG test in 1998, and it's you know, we understood that the needs of practitioners compared with you know, the general public are very different requirements, and therefore we set up Lorisian in 2011 to service practitioners with product offerings that were suitable for them, and that's why we've got the two names. But the heritage we have is from York Test.
Right. Okay. So, like, York Test is the brand that the consumer recognises, and Lorisian has become like the sort of practitioner brand and product.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's how it's evolved. Exactly.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so the question here from Lindsay. She has had some providers have said it's better to eat a more varied diet prior to taking the test, because eating all the same food can influence the test results. Have you come across this?
That's a really, really good question. I think if people know that they are reacting to a food, we say do not introduce it back into their diet to make themselves ill. because they know they're reacting to it, and therefore there's no need to do that. I think obviously if you want to make the most from the test results, and we test 208 different food and drink ingredients, not necessarily saying that you need to eat all 208, but clearly if you are avoiding a food for a long period of time, then your body may not produce IgG antibodies anymore. So you could extend the range of your diet. We typically just say to people, just eat your normal diet beforehand, and if you're suffering from symptoms, then you were likely to pick up the culprit.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so if someone was avoiding a trigger food because they suspected, and then they went and had the test, well, if they hadn't eaten it for a couple of months, then it's not going to show up. Is that?
That's right. Yeah, that's very true. But equally, I wouldn't want somebody to suffer and have to
start eating it to test
something just to prove that something they know already. And what often is the case actually is that people think it's one thing, and it may be, it might be cow's milk, but often there's a number of foods that are maybe not so obvious. I mean, for me, it was the cow's milk, but also it was things like lentils, limes, almonds, and when I actually swapped from my cow's milk to soya milk, my soya level went up, because I test myself every year, and I have done for 15 years. And I consistently get cow's milk, and if I swap to soya milk, then I get the soya milk level comes back up again. So I try and avoid that too, soya. So it's not always just the main thing that people think they're reacting to. It's what we call a food fingerprint. It's often those 4, 5, 6 things that are impacting.
Okay, fantastic. And then Leslie is asking, where can we find the list of the 208 various drinks? Is there a link that I can include in the email?
Yeah, if we go back to we can provide that to you if you get in touch with us, and I think we will be emailing out participants anyway, won't we, Andrea? So we can actually ensure that we provide a link in that email to everybody with all the ingredients. It is available on our Lorisian.com and our YorkTest.com websites as well.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so I don't see any more questions. So I think this is going to bring us to the end of today's presentation. Thank you, Gill, so much. And thank you, everybody, for attending and for asking your questions. So next month, our guest presenter will be Kat Simmons from Vibrant America Clinical Lab. She'll be presenting the latest in functional lab testing. So please mark your calendars for Thursday, November 14. Until then, have a great rest of your day. Thank you, everybody, and bye-bye for now.
Thank you.